You ever hear a story so wild, you'd swear it was straight out of a TV drama? Well, buckle up, because this one involves a raging HOA Karen, a pair of wire cutters, and my prize bull casually strolling into her perfect little manicured yard. And let me tell you, what happened next shook the entire neighborhood. It started on a calm Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee on my porch, watching the mist roll off the fields, when I heard the sharp clink-clink of metal on metal. At first, I thought it was one of my ranch hands fixing something out back. But no, when I rounded the corner, I froze. There she was, Patricia Hendress, our notorious HOA president, though out here she had no real power, standing at my fence line with a smug grin and a pair of bright orange bolt cutters. "Morning," she said, like she was borrowing a cup of sugar. Then, snip! One of the main sections of my livestock fence collapsed to the ground. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just some white picket neighborhood divider. This was the barrier keeping my Angus bull, Diesel, exactly where he belonged. And sure enough, Diesel lifted his head from the pasture, snorted like a freight train, and started lumbering toward the new opening. "Patricia!" I yelled, sprinting closer. "What in God's name are you doing?" She planted her hands on her hips. "Your fence is an eyesore. The HOA has rules and you're in violation. I'm correcting it myself." I almost laughed, except there was nothing funny about watching 1,200 pounds of pure muscle slowly cross into her perfectly trimmed grass. Diesel wasn't dangerous unless provoked, but he was big, curious, and had a knack for sniffing out anything he thought might be edible. By the time I got to the busted section, Diesel was already standing in her yard, nudging her decorative bird bath. It tipped, splashing water all over her new patio stones. Patricia gasped like the world was ending, shrieking, "That beast is destroying my property!" "That beast," I shot back, "was behind a secure fence until you cut it." She didn't care. Instead of admitting her mistake, she whipped out her phone, barking into it, "I'm calling the HOA board and the sheriff. This is trespassing." The sheer audacity made my jaw drop. She'd created the problem and now wanted me punished for it. Neighbors started peeking from porches, whispering, phones raised to capture the spectacle. And that's when Diesel lumbered straight toward her. Prize rose garden, the one she bragged about every month at HOA meetings. Diesel lowered his massive head and sniffed at Patricia's rose bushes. The neighbors gasped in unison, like they were watching a slow-motion disaster unfold. Patricia shrieked, waving her arms frantically. "Get him out of here! He's going to ruin everything!" I held back a laugh, though inside I was boiling with anger. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you destroyed my fence," I said. But Diesel was already doing what bulls do best, ignoring humans and investigating anything that smelled remotely interesting. He shoved his nose deep into the roses, snapped the stems like toothpicks, and chewed the blossoms as if they were gourmet treats. Patricia let out a sound somewhere between a scream and a sob. "Those are award-winning. Do you have any idea how much work goes into that garden?" I crossed my arms. "About as much work as I put into building the fence you just cut down." By now, more neighbors had gathered, phones out, recording everything. Some were grinning. Some were whispering, and one guy even muttered, "Finally, someone's putting Karen in her place." Patricia, of course, was too wrapped up in her panic to notice the audience. Just then, I heard the low rumble of a pickup truck. My buddy Tom, who helps me on the ranch, pulled up, taking in the scene with wide eyes. He leaned out the window and hollered, "Jack, why's Diesel pruning roses in Patricia's yard?" "Because Patricia decided she's the sheriff around here," I replied. "Took it upon herself to fix my fence." Tom chuckled, but Patricia spun toward him, pointing like a furious prosecutor. "Don't you dare laugh. This is criminal trespass. That beast is a menace and oh no, oh no, oh no." She cut herself off because Diesel had just discovered her patio furniture. He nudged a chair, then hooked it with his horn, tossing it aside like it was made of cardboard. The crowd burst out laughing, and Patricia's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "You're responsible for this." She shrieked at me. "I'm calling animal control!" I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Be my guest, but when they ask how my bull got into your yard, you might want to explain why you were holding bolt cutters." Her mouth snapped shut. For the first time all morning, she looked rattled. Still, pride wouldn't let her back down. She clutched her phone like a lifeline, dialing with trembling fingers. The neighbors whispered louder, phones still rolling. And me? I just waited, arms folded, as Diesel snorted happily and knocked over her bird feeder next. Patricia's shrill voice carried across the yard as she barked into the phone. "Yes, Sheriff, I need immediate assistance. There's a dangerous bull destroying my property." She shot me a venomous glare as if daring me to argue. But I didn't need to argue, because Diesel was putting on a show that spoke louder than words. He'd knocked over her fancy bird feeder, stomped through her mulch beds, and now he was circling her prized fountain. Patricia gasped in horror. "No, no, not the fountain!" The neighbors were nearly doubled over with laughter, recording every second. One woman whispered to her husband, "She's finally getting a taste of her own medicine." Another chimed in, "Karma's got horns today." I stepped closer, trying to keep my voice calm. "Patricia, you need to stop before you dig yourself deeper. Diesel's not dangerous. He's just curious. If you give me 5 minutes, I'll get him back where he belongs." She jabbed a finger at me, face twisted with rage. "I don't care. You've endangered me and my property. The sheriff will deal with you. You'll regret ever moving here." That last line struck a nerve. I'd lived on that land for years. Long before Patricia and her clipboard-wielding HOA crew invaded the neighborhood. My ranch wasn't under her jurisdiction, and she knew it. Yet she always pushed, always tried to flex authority she didn't have. And now she was about to learn the hard way. Tom leaned against his truck, shaking his head. "Jack, reckon we should grab the grain bucket before Diesel decides the fountain's a scratching post?" I nodded, but before I could move, Diesel dipped his head and gave the fountain a mighty shove. The entire stone base tilted, water spilling out like a busted hydrant. The crowd erupted into cheers and laughter, phones flashing. Patricia's scream nearly pierced the sky. She rushed toward Diesel, waving her arms, yelling, "Shoo! Get out of here, you stupid beast!" I felt my gut tighten. "Patricia, don't—" Too late. Diesel didn't take kindly to being shouted at. He puffed out a snort, pawed the ground once, then turned his massive head her way. Not charging, not aggressive, just enough to remind her exactly how small she was compared to him. She froze mid-step, her bravado evaporating. The neighbors fell silent, holding their breath. Diesel swung his tail lazily and trotted toward Tom's truck, bored with the drama. Patricia sagged with relief, but the damage to her perfect yard was undeniable. And just then, the distant wail of a siren grew louder. The siren grew louder until a county sheriff's SUV rolled up, gravel crunching under its tires. The neighbors straightened, phones still aimed, eager to catch the climax. Patricia practically sprinted to the vehicle, flailing her arms like she was flagging down an ambulance. "Officer? Thank God you're here!" she wailed. "That man's beast destroyed my property, trampled my roses, knocked over my fountain. Look, it's chaos! Arrest him immediately!" The sheriff stepped out slowly, sunglasses glinting in the sun. He scanned the scene. Diesel calmly munching on grass near Tom's truck. My collapsed fence. Patricia's ruined yard. Then his eyes landed on the orange bolt cutters, still lying where she dropped them. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and steady, "mind explaining those cutters?" Patricia froze. She stammered, those aren't mine. I don't know how they got there." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Funny, I got 3 different neighbors here telling me they saw you cut that fence." He gestured toward the crowd, and a chorus of voices rose. "She did it," one neighbor called. "Got the whole thing on video," another added, holding up his phone. The sheriff folded his arms. "So let me get this straight. You cut your neighbor's livestock fence. His bull walked through. And now you're blaming him for the damage?" Patricia's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "No, that's not— This is unsafe. He's endangering the whole neighborhood. I finally stepped forward. Sheriff, I keep my animals secure. Always. Diesel never would have left my pasture if Patricia hadn't taken matters into her own hands. The sheriff gave me a firm nod, then turned back to Patricia. Ma'am, tampering with a livestock fence is destruction of property, not to mention reckless endangerment. You're lucky no one was hurt. The neighbors murmured their approval, some even clapping softly. Patricia sputtered, desperate. But the HOA rules. The sheriff cut her off. The HOA doesn't trump county law. Out here, livestock fences are legal, and you don't get to play vigilante. Patricia looked like she might collapse right there on her pristine lawn. Tom leaned against his truck, grinning ear to ear. Guess Diesel just taught the HOA president a valuable lesson. Diesel, as if on cue, let out a long, satisfied snort. The crowd burst into laughter, and even the sheriff cracked a smile. As for Patricia, she slunk back toward her house, humiliated, while the neighbors kept their cameras rolling. That day, the whole HOA learned something important. Don't mess with a rancher's fence or his bull. If you enjoyed this crazy HOA Karen story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more wild neighborhood dramas. Your support keeps these stories coming.